a video review of the Sony ZV-1 made for vlogging camera. I'm Chris, this is Yellow Productions. I do travel guides that are fun, informed, entertaining, and this is a camera I just added to my travel gear lineup. I've owned it for just about a month and I wanted to share it with you. This camera, released in June of 2020, retails for $799. It has a 1-inch sensor, flip-out screen. It is made for vlogging just as much as it is made for photos. It looks like a photo camera, but it has a lot of modifications to make it a video camera, all in one: photos, videos, but particularly photos and videos of the selfie variety. First things first, I'll talk about the pros, then I'll talk about the cons, then I'll end with an overall conclusion as to whether this camera is going to end up with a spot in my camera bag. If you're looking for like super technical details about this and how low light it goes and how many megapixels, that's probably a different video. This video, the owner's perspective of what it's like to actually use this camera and not a whole bunch of technical mumbo jumbo. The first pro of this camera is the size. It is small, it easily fits in the palm of your hand, it easily fits in a cargo pocket, it easily fits in a small purse, and so you can take it just about anywhere. Second pro is the flip out screen. The screen opens up like this and then flips out so that you can do selfie mode just like this to see yourself as you're shooting. I'm shooting in bright sun, so you probably won't see much of the screen right now. The other nice thing is it turns on and off when you open and close the screen. There's a particular mode that you can set it, but actually, because I've got the screen flipped out like this so you can see it, it didn't turn on and off. But if I flip the screen around this way and now close it, then it turns off and the lens closes. It's nice because there's no lens cover. It's a quick on. When you want to turn on, you just open that up, it's on, and it's ready to take pictures. I like that there's no lens cap because I'm always the one who's always losing lens cap. All right, for this scene, I had to move out of the sun into the shade so you can see the screen. So one of the nice things about this camera, in addition to the screen being a flip out screen, it's a touch screen, so you can touch on the screen to select a focal point. It does a really good job, even if you're not manually focusing, to focus on faces. I can click on mine right there and it will focus on my face. It does a really good job of adjusting the exposure and lighting based on faces as well. But it's also got another feature called product showcase mode. Normally with facial tracking, if you hold up something like a phone in front of it that maybe you're reviewing, it'll still try to focus on the face. Most cameras do that, but this camera has what's called product showcase mode. Now, when I hold something up in front of the camera, it focuses on that instead of my face. So it'll quickly focus on this and then it'll return to my face. So I mentioned that it's a photo camera as much as a video camera. When it's in photo mode, the screen's a little bit bigger. When you go in video, it does crop down a little bit. When it's recording, it's nice. It has audio levels on it, and then you can see all the various camera settings as well as a histogram. And it's really designed to be in auto mode. I find the auto mode really is good, but you can adjust all the manual settings that you want to your heart's content, or just see them displayed when you're in that auto mode. So speaking of this camera being a hybrid photo and video camera, it's actually got two buttons on the top, one to take photos and one to take videos. The photo mode I find most useful as a YouTuber that makes thumbnail photos is the smile shutter mode. It's what I've got it in right now, and you see on the side it's got this smile meter, and when I smile, then it takes pictures. This is really useful taking thumbnails because often you've got a big smile in the thumbnail. You know, when I do it with my phone, like my Samsung S20, like you put a hand up and it has a little timer, but this is nice, you don't have to put anything up and you can just smile naturally. You don't have to click a button, so nothing shakes and it just takes those pictures. You know, but I'm wondering, what other smiles might the camera detect? Do you think it works on baby smiles? Let's give it a try. Smile, princess. Is it working? Smile. Yeah, smile. Smile. Hey, look at that. It does detect the smile. The smile shutter works on baby smile. 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 How? Smile. Okay, what about, will it work on the smile of a stuffed animal? No, it doesn't even detect that the stuffed animal is a face. No, definitely not. Now, what about a picture of somebody smiling? Let's check this out. Yeah, the smile meter gets big. It does detect a picture of somebody smiling. Now, what about a smile without teeth? So the mouth has to be open for it to work. Now, I will point out that in today's COVID-19 world, doesn't so much work when I smile underneath a mask, but that's what the vlogging kit attachment's for that I'll show you in just a little bit. Okay, back into the pretty spot to talk about audio on the camera. So there's 3 ways to record audio on the ZV-1. The first way is it's got a microphone here on top. This is what the on-camera microphone sounds like on the ZV-1, held at approximately arm's length. You can probably tell it sounds a lot better than most photo cameras because they've got little tiny microphones, but it doesn't sound as good as the audio you've been listening to before. That's the wireless microphone that you could plug into the top, but for this video I've had connected to my camcorder that I'm shooting most of this video on. You can plug in an external microphone right here on the side. There's a little cover that flips open to plug in an external mic right in there. And then finally, my favorite thing about this for audio, it has a hot shoe interface up here, so you can plug in any of Sony's kind of hot shoe type devices. In particular, I like the Sony ECM-W1M. This is what I'm actually using to record right now on the camcorder that I'm shooting, and that's got this little Bluetooth receiver on top of the camera, and it's got this microphone right here. So what you've been listening to me most of the time on is the Bluetooth mic connected into my camcorder, but the same Bluetooth mic also works on this. It gets powered by the still transmitter. You never forget to turn on the transmitter, which I often forget to turn on transmitters if this is battery powered. The software-based stabilization on the ZV-1 is pretty decent when you're standing still and holding the camera out for selfie mode. It's not as good as a GoPro. It's also not as good as a camcorder. I think it works decent for just the standing and holding shots. Where it kind of fails a little bit is when you're doing a bit of the walk and talk that you might do with vlogging. This is where it starts to get a little bit choppier and a little bit bumpier because the lens is not actually mechanically optically stabilized. It's all done in software. The second accessory that's a must-buy with the ZV-1 after a microphone is the handheld shooting grip. This is sold as a vlogger kit with the ZV-1 for an extra 150 bucks or so. The way this works has a tripod attachment. You screw it on to the camera. The handheld shooting grip gives you a lot of different ways to control the camera. It works wirelessly and pairs via Bluetooth to the camera, so it's nice. There's no cables to connect to it. You can zoom in, you can zoom out, you can start recording from here. You can take photos from here. You can't take photos at the same time as you do video, but this is nice because if you're trying to do selfies, you want to get the camera a little further away from you, and then if you're wearing that mask, you can click the photo button right there to take all the photos that you want. It's also got this button right here, C1, which I didn't talk about earlier. So there's a C1 button here on the handle. There's also a C1 button here on top of the camera. You can reprogram this to do something else, but what it's programmed for out of the box, it's programmed for the automatic bokeh mode to basically blur the background. And it does this not in software, but it does this by changing the aperture settings, and so you get kind of that nice DSLR effect of a blurred background. I really like this particular look. It kind of gives the video a nice sharp look, and I do really like the way the video looks coming out of here. If you look at this and think I look like a squirrel, I wouldn't say that's because the camera's bad. That's just because I'm standing out here in broad daylight with the sun being overhead. I probably chose a poor time to do this, but actually the best time probably to review a camera is when you have poor lighting conditions. Any camera can look pretty good if the lighting is good. This is with the background blur off. You can see the background looks pretty clear, and now this is with the background blur on as I'm just pushing that little button here on the grip. It's pretty easy to do when the button's on the grip. It's hard to do while you're shooting if the button's up here. You could change that if you want to the product showcase mode or something else. In addition to being a handheld grip, this grip also functions as a little bit of a tripod, so you can open it up and put it on a table, and it's battery operated by a CR2032 kind of coin cell battery. The shooting grip also gives you a handy way if you want to do tall videos. Most camcorders and DSLR cameras are not that easy to hold like this, particularly when doing selfies, but this gives you a really convenient grip to make tall videos, maybe to share on Instagram stories, YouTube stories, or IGTV. But my favorite thing about the ZV-1 goes back to the first Pro. The size makes it look not professional. Chris, why do you want to look not professional? Why do you want to look like an amateur? Well, because there's a lot of places that are trained to look for professional cameras and tell you to not record if they see you with one. For example, concerts are often places where they'll have a sign posted and say, no professional cameras, and then they typically define professional cameras as ones that have removable lenses or camcorders. Well, this one is neither. This just looks like somebody taking pictures. In fact, it doesn't even look like a video camera. Lots of places might say, hey, it's okay to take photos, but you know, as soon as you start doing video, they get kind of iffy. And so this way, you can easily kind of do the run and gun. You can put this up, you can talk to it, and because it's so small, you don't attract that much attention. Okay, so now let's talk about the cons of the ZV-1. First con and the biggest con, and this is a weird con since this is a made for vlogging camera, is held at arm's length. I feel the lens is not wide enough. I really want this to be further away from me. I'm holding it right now from the shooting grip, and you can see from the camera it's pretty close up. This is obviously why they sell it with this vlogging kit attachment, so you can get a little further away to get a little bit more comfortable type thing. This is what it looks like recording at 1080p. Shooting at 4K, it's cropped in even more. This is what the lens looks like shooting in 4K handheld. This is what it looks like 4K at the end of that handheld attachment. I just feel like I'm a little too close for comfort. Now, the other thing that's kind of a drag when shooting at 4K is the stabilization is not as good in 4K. Again, it's probably okay when it's handheld, but when you start walking, that's when it can get a little bit shaky. And so if you've got a camcorder that has optically stabilized, that's much better for the walk and talk than the handheld is. The final annoying thing in 4K is that the screen dims when you're recording in 4K. So if you're out in bright sunlight, it's actually pretty good in 1080 on bright days, but in 4K it gets dimmer. I think the 4K mode consumes more batteries, and so they can't pump all of it to the screen and the 4K recording at the same time. The battery life on the ZV-1 is really short. I want to show you the battery on it, but another annoying thing about where they've placed the battery is that in order to get the battery out or the memory card out, you have to take it off the tripod because the door to the memory card is right here, which is right next to the tripod mount. Here's the battery. It's a really tiny battery, so if you're going to be using this for any substantial video, you're going to need quite a few of these batteries. They are the Sony X-type batteries. I get maybe 30 minutes of recording on it, maybe even less. And the memory card slot is right down here, right below the battery. One memory card slot, so no dual recording. And I didn't think this would be as big of a deal. I knew about this before I bought the camera, but when I've been using it on tripods and the battery dies because it's so short and you have to go through 2 or 3 batteries in a shoot, really annoying. You can power it while you're recording through the multi-USB interface right here. It also has a really short zoom length. It's a 2.9x zoom length. This is going from widest to most zoomed in, the most telephoto. If I compare that to what I've got on my camcorder, taken from the same spot, starting at the widest setting and zooming in, zooming in, zooming in, zooming in, that's a big difference. So I really miss the mega zoom. ZV-1, full zoom, camcorder, full zoom. So you're not really going to be shooting any far away stuff. Again, as I mentioned earlier, this is designed for selfie vlogging, so keep that in mind. Okay, I had to go to that ugly shady spot again to show you this next section, but the menu system is really leaves something to be desired. There's so many pages of menus, pages of pages of pages of pages, that this really does leave something to be desired. They do give you this little My Menu settings so you can add your own items, but there are like nearly 30 pages of menus, and trying to find that option that you want when you're shooting can take a really long time. And I mentioned earlier that you can set everything as manual settings, but because there's so few buttons on it, you really don't want to be setting many things manually all that often. You want to set it up probably once for the shot and not really have to change it. The background defocus feature that I mentioned earlier is a really cool feature, but it only really works with subjects that are close up. If they're far away, this doesn't work all that well. You could do this better on a DSLR camera, even with subjects that are further away. The camera advertises this fancy modified shooting grip, so you can take selfies. It's designed for you to hold with your left hand, which I find kind of annoying because I like to hold things with my right hand to take selfies because I'm right-handed. I don't think this is really the best way to hold the camera, so I guess that's what the shooting grip is for. I found myself using the shooting grip to take most of my selfies. By the way, this is some really kind of interesting Inception stuff about me taking a selfie, recording myself taking a selfie. Really hard to get a good angle to take a video of something like this. The hot shoe that I mentioned earlier is really nice, but the con is it doesn't support all the Sony hot shoe attachments. In particular, it does not support the Sony XLR attachment, which is something that I use to attach high-end microphones to my camcorder. So just know there's no easy way to attach XLR microphones to the ZV-1. Now, speaking of photos, it'll record in JPEGs as well as RAW files. The RAW files are not yet supported by most photo editing software. This will likely be corrected soon as Adobe and other companies bring in support for this new camera. So that's something probably to not be a con in the future, but it is a con right now. And my wife, O.C. Girl, the photographer in the family, she thinks that the JPEGs look a little too saturated from the photos. So in conclusion, should you buy the Sony ZV-1 or should you skip it? Well, for $799, I think Sony packed a lot of value into this small little form factor, but there's also been a lot of compromises made to get it at the price it is and to get it so small. But if you're okay with those compromises, then absolutely go for it. Now, you're not going to be able to sell your DSLR camera or your camcorder on eBay and replace it with these, but it has a good place in a lineup of a few cameras. And so in particular for me, am I going to return it or am I going to keep it? I think it's definitely earned a place in our lineup after using it for the month. It's earned a place in our travel camera bag, particularly when I want something that is small, that doesn't look professional, that I can just carry around like this. I don't have to lug lenses. I don't have to lug a big camera. It's really good with the vlogger kit, which does make it a little bit bigger, but I'm also going to be primarily recording in 1080p with this because the 4K recording handheld loses the stabilization, it makes it a little dimmer, and the battery life really is just the pits in 4K. So 1080p handheld recording. If I'm doing 4K, then I'm definitely using it on a tripod. So if you're still in the market for a camera and you're not convinced it's the ZV-1, well, you might be interested in checking out this video right here where I talk to 9 other YouTubers and they share with you what camera they use for making their travel videos. Well, as usual, I won't say goodbye because I'll see you in this video.